Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the All in Crypto podcast. I am your host, Rupert, and today we've got a special guest lined up for you. If you are on Twitter and you're interested in crypto projects like XLM, XRP, Hedera, some of the ISO coins, but the crypto space more broadly, there is pretty much no chance that you haven't came across our next guest. Of course, I'm referring to Smoke, as he goes on Twitter, who is an amazing researcher when it comes to uncovering the space broadly. So welcome on board, Smoke. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invite, Rupert. I've been watching your YouTube page for a few months now, and I'm certainly impressed myself, and definitely appreciate you sharing the good word on the what's going on in this technological shift and covering some of the documents I share. You're definitely a great person to summarize and communicate the value of the documentation to your audience.
Yeah, and this is what I think really drew me to your Twitter. Certainly as it relates to specific coins, but more broadly, you really seem to be able to find things that other people have missed. And not just in the form of what has been said by an individual, but what's actually documented, all kind of hinting at, like you say, this technological shift that we're living through and the kind of importance of understanding all of this. Maybe you could perhaps summarize to start things off. How important do you think it is that people understand what's going on right now?
Well, a common saying that's said in our community and definitely in the broader asset community is that we are entering the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. This is a time period where everyone will look back on as a time period that they'll regret not being locked in with the market, paying attention to crypto assets, and um, we're truly at the period before pre trillions of dollars flood into the market and will drastically change the prices of these assets that are pennies on the dollar before they become a lot unaffordable for the average person, if I might say, for the retail investor, not the elite wealthy individual. And smart money institutions, they are really tapped in. They are documenting every step of the way regarding this digital transformation, how these assets will be integrated into our financial system and our daily lives. And the average person will use these assets in one way or another. So you should view this opportunity as something to get ahead of, as opposed to being in the system regardless. And these assets are really attainable and really accessible to the average person through internet connections, cell phones, apps. Many exchanges that offer these valuable utility assets is simply the information, the documentation that most people tend to miss and not connect with the assets that are available, widely available on these exchanges that can, produce generational wealth.
Yeah, wow. And we're going to get into all that, by the way, guys. So if you like the sound of that, make sure you stick around to see this interview out in full. You know, it's very good of Smoke to give us his time. Like I say, again, going back to what I said at the start, it's why I was so attracted to Smoke's social medias, is because he finds the documentation and it's as clear as day in regards to what these institutions who may have been saying one thing publicly, but what they've been doing is entirely different. And this technology is going to impact our day-to-day lives in much the same way, perhaps to a bigger degree, that other technologies that have sort of came before it do today. We don't think about the fact that an engine was a technology at one point. Now we just take it for granted and we drive to work, or we're communicating on the internet, or we use our phones. We're kind of becoming cyborgs in that aspect. And crypto also not only, I think, revolutionizes many of the industries that we have, but is creating entirely new ones. And I'm sure we're going to get into some of that. But Smoke, where I really want to start is with a bit about yourself. So some people might be coming across you for the first time. There's a very eclectic group of us here in the cryptocurrency space. And I think because of how much of an amazing researcher you are in regards to this whole space, where did that journey begin? How did you kind of get turned on to the crypto industry?
Sure. So my journey started back in the bear market of 2018. A mentor of mine, he sent me some Bitcoin with very limited information. He didn't really tell me what it was, what the use case was, or he just showed me how to set up a wallet and sent me a small amount of Bitcoin. And I pretty much didn't do much digging into it at that point in time. And 2019 going to 2020. That's when I became more familiar with coins outside of Bitcoin, about a year after that. And COVID, the pandemic was definitely a point in time in my life where everyone had the time to get into a niche topic, something worth your time, worth money. And crypto certainly was something that was just coming across my feed pretty often. And I already had a background in software engineering, computer science, and already having that experience with Bitcoin, I began to realize there was a bigger picture than I was initially exposed to, and coming across XRP initially, and then eventually the rest of the ISO assets. The I would say the aha moment for understanding assets outside of Bitcoin and why I would dedicated 100% of my time to the list of ISO assets, simply because one of the first impressions I had of the crypto space was the lack of seriousness. There was just scams and memes and things of that nature, and I knew I didn't want to put my hard-earned money into something that wasn't serious, or something that didn't have a long-term prospect to it. And seeing an actual list of internationally regulated coins with government approval and bank participation, that was very obvious to me. When I seen that list and I seen the partnerships with all of the assets, and that was when I pretty much dropped everything regarding money allocated to Bitcoin, Ethereum, or anything else, and simply dived head on into ISO assets in 2020, and share my documentation, my research with others. And I was doing that behind the scenes for a extended period of time. And after a while, I realized that all of the research that I was coming up with, um, majority of the crypto space on social media, people that I was following couldn't find that information. They weren't discovering the same things that I was discovering. And as I was sharing that information, that will always show up on YouTube videos and show up online. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm finding things that other people can't find. And it's even when I took a break, people didn't see the things that I um, was bringing to light. So that's when I decided to, started to just take it more serious and share it online a lot more. And as you can, if anyone goes to my Twitter page, it's pretty much documenting my entire research journey, uncovering what's happening in this space, and still to this day, keeping up a serious, consistent, and academic approach with uncovering what crypto assets will be valuable in the future.
Boom. That's why I sort of love keeping up to date with your Twitter. By the way, guys, there's links to Smoke's Twitter in the description. Smoke also has a really exclusive sort of research group, which we'll also leave a link to, and of course you can find that on through Smoke's Twitter. But we can talk about that more towards the end. I really want to dive into some of the research and some of the things that you've uncovered and you now understand. Before I do that, though, however, our journey often starts with Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is still a large part of this space. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin? Do you perhaps think it was introduced to us as a kind of Trojan horse? Do you think it sort of is really going to become the store of value of tomorrow? I'd love to sort of get your general thoughts of Bitcoin having perhaps moved away from it, if that's fair to say.
I'm very familiar with that's one thing that I took serious when I first got into crypto, was researching everything that I missed. I understood getting into crypto. In hindsight now, getting into crypto in 2017, 2018 was a great time. But at that time, when I got into crypto, I felt as though I missed a lot. I felt as though there was a lot of things happening. And before I deployed a lot of capital into the space, I did a lot of historical research on the origin days of Bitcoin, the early days of each cycle, and just learning what I missed pretty much. And over the years, and fast forward to today, and as we have Bitcoin ETFs and sovereign nations adopting Bitcoin, and even with the existence of the tether um conspiracies, and not conspiracies, but the tether just connections between Bitcoin. um, I would say in the long term, after everything that I've seen, Bitcoin will simply be a antique viewed cryptocurrency, as anyone can think of physical, tangible, valuable antique assets like coins, old watches. Those are all um, very valuable items that resell for a lot these days. And Bitcoin, I believe, in the digital realm, it will be viewed in a very similar way. It will be expensive. However, it will not be something people want to move a lot. It's not going to be something that people are going to attempt to use on a day-to-day basis simply because of all the inherent technical restrictions of it. And as it becomes more valuable and the hash rate increases to, and the difficulty to mine Bitcoin increases as well, it's simply not even going to be a practical thing to move Bitcoin around, simply like it's not practical to have a ton of gold, to move from one location to another location. So having your valuable antique Bitcoin when in an era of the proliferation of public blockchains and other altcoins and utility tokens actually facilitating value in our system, it's simply going to just be a antique digital asset that people are going to wish they had some, but at the end of the day, there's going to be other opportunities, other coins that will share the spotlight with Bitcoin in the future.
Yeah, and I think Bitcoin is a complex puzzle to work out. Not just talking about the origins of it and perhaps true intent, but also its role in the future. I think Roger Ver did a great book where he tried to sort of put forward the argument that it was hijacked to never become practically scalable to do what it was initially set out to do. I think that's a fascinating book to read and certainly story to follow, because it seems that this amazing mind, whoever he, she, they were, um, somehow didn't figure out, okay, well, what happens if this technology actually gets used? How are we going to scale it? Yet he managed to understand so many other things so brilliantly. And I think there's a lot of questions that we can derive from that. And I think it's going to be one of the greatest stories ever told, certainly in regards to all the things that have followed it and this shift, this global shift that's taking place. So would you say that Bitcoin doesn't remain the kind of number one crypto moving forwards? And if so, what sort of cryptos do you think might usurp it?
So I certainly believe that Bitcoin will not remain number one for forever. That's certainly that is for a variety of reasons. The first doesn't mean the best. There's many examples of this in the real world, and that goes for Bitcoin and Ethereum. I've been hearing many chatters behind the scenes of institutions that Ethereum is kind of on a shaky foundation, and that's not a popular conversation to have. But Bitcoin and Ethereum both have technical limitations that will threaten their dominance in the future, while ISO assets, utility tokens, XRP, XLM, HBAR, et cetera, have the capabilities to increase their value through utility, through daily usage, 24/7 usage, and most importantly, scalability, efficiency. And that's what banks and financial institutions seek when they're adopting new technologies to improve their processes to make them more efficient and save costs. Bitcoin and Ethereum has been documented as two crypto assets that simply cannot scale to the need of financial institutions that can't keep up to their pr- transaction per second speed that is required to keep up with client demands. And those are things that I've seen documented in direct comparison to XRP and other ISO assets. So understanding that and understanding the limitations of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and also taking into consideration that ISO assets have tokenization capabilities and they're internationally regulated and have governmental approval to be used in high volume, high velocity environments. It is easy to see how they will be able to transact hundreds of trillions of dollars in the long term, of course. Meanwhile, Bitcoin and Ethereum will struggle to keep up with their utility and efficiency.
Yeah, I don't think it's a popular conversation to have, but I think it's an adult conversation to have. And I think the reason it's not popular is just because they've been about for longer. They perhaps have slightly bigger communities, more people invested in them. I always bring this up because it's a bit of interesting sort of trivia in regards to Peter Thiel actually giving Vitalik Buterin $100,000 kind of loan or grant, not a loan, a grant in 2014. And he's just been so instrumental in technology broadly. It's very interesting that there are links with him to this industry today. Certainly, when we talk about Ripple, which was OpenCoin, which of course Founders Fund were direct backers on. There's this. There's a hell of a lot going on, and we're going to try and hopefully sort of uncover some of that during the course of this. But I think I absolutely agree with you in regards to Bitcoin and Ethereum. And actually, we've spoken to a lot of institutions. A lot of them will move on to coins like Hedera, other coins like this. Certainly, when it comes to tokenization, because it's just so cumbersome. Archax is a great example. They don't just use Hedera; they also use XRP, Algo, these sort of coins. Um, Ethereum's really kind of, I think, outdated and perhaps run its course. But you mentioned ISO coins. Now, we're going through your sort of journey in the space, and I think this is very much going to explain, and we'll look at some of what you've found on the way, um, why people should be paying attention to sort of ISO coins and these coins that we're going to be talking about today, and the coins that you talk about. Where did you initially start to hear about these? What was it? Were you hearing about ISO, or were you hearing about sort of XRP, XLM, and looking into them, and then they just happened to fit under this umbrella, or was it ISO specifically that you started hearing about? And maybe we can explain what ISO is in doing that.
Okay, yeah, so that would be a great starting point. So ISO standards, the that is the international financial messaging language that banks use to facilitate transactions in between each other, high value payments. And currently, there's a list of coins that are ISO compliant. And ISO compliance basically means that a third party has verified that your company has the business capabilities to produce profit, that they work, that they don't fail in high pressure environments. And all other crypto assets that aren't ISO compliant has not went through the same due diligence and not have went through the same stringent judgment from international bodies and well-respected influential organizations. So there's 8: XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, Algorand, Quant, Iota, and Cardano. Those are all the ISO assets. These are eight ICE assets that I initially did not. I was not aware of this list when I first got into crypto, and XRP was the next coin that I went into after Bitcoin, and I was doing strictly 100% XRP Ripple research, and the next coin that showed up, just because it was consistently being paired with Ripple, I just kept seeing Ripple and Stellar, Ripple and Stellar. So seeing that, I don't deny patterns when I see patterns occur over and over again, and also seeing the importance placed on Stellar next to Ripple, that's when I, increased my Stellar bag. And as I went down Ripple research, Stellar research, that's when I started to notice Ripple and Stellar being paired with other ISO assets, HBAR, Algorand, just in the same conversation of as usefulness, carbon neutral blockchains like Hedera, Algorand. All of those blockchains kept coming up in serious conversation, whether that was a video or a bank PDF document. It was the same assets over and over again. And after seeing those same names repeated, that's when I discovered the list of ISO assets. And that's when, I realized it wasn't just a coincidence that the same assets are being used for being chosen for the biggest payment systems in the world. The most serious regulators in the world are acknowledging these assets and their importance and their significance for the future. And, even back then it wasn't as clear as it is now. But for me, it's always been very clear and abundantly clear that I should pay attention to these eight assets and not anything that doesn't have a serious um, business plan, a serious serious tokenomics. That's a basic blockchain um, red flag that you want to make sure you doesn't apply to the asset that you're investing in. That the founders don't control majority of the supply, and ISO assets pretty much check off all of the good things you want to see in the crypto assets you're putting your capital behind.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. I mean, I've been diving into ISO for probably a couple of years now, but I think what you're saying rings so true. You start to see this kind of grouping of these coins almost cross-reference consistently, and it's very interesting if you look at how the current world of value works. Certainly, from a currency point of view, a transactional point of view, these standards are essentially what enables it to work. We already have ISO standards in various different industries, but certainly as it relates to finance. And actually, it's very interesting that you have these 8 cryptocurrencies that are all and have gone through the trouble, whilst many others haven't, of adhering to become ISO standard cryptos. Um, and ultimately, then we get the likes of Swift, Euroclear, everybody coming out and saying by the end of 2025, I can't remember what the deadline was. Is it November 2025? December?
Yes.
everybody needs to
November
migrate.
2025.
Everybody needs to migrate onto this standard. So it is extremely interesting. And if you look at how the current world of value moves, there's likely going to be a crossover in regards to the standards and the kind of protocols to the world of value or the internet of value that we're trying to enable today, which is the tokenization and sort of transacting of value in the same way that we transact information on the internet. And I don't think a lot of people understand that concept. To you, what is, you know, is what is the internet of value? What sort of really being enabled with some of these cryptos before we go into them specifically?
Sure. So to talk about the internet of value in the most basic, to get develop a basic foundation, a foundational understanding of what is to come, you have to start with the internet. The internet was the last greatest wealth creation event. This is the next greatest wealth creation event and will be remembered as such. But the internet, when it came onto the scene and began to be integrated into the daily lives of citizens and governments, the goal was simply to digitize information, content, video, things of that nature. And the adoption phase that we're in regarding the internet of value is now digitizing the back end, the value and the settlement and regarding the financial system. And the internet did a great job at making all documents digital, all videos digital, all forms of entertainment digital. However, we still, after decades of having the internet, we didn't digitize value, physical value, moving value, money. Money is still moving in an electrical form predominantly. And now the wave that we're in, where consumers have originally experienced front end facilitation of transactions such as instant payment at Zelle, Cash App, Venmo. The front end has been revolutionized where participating in a financial system has been simplified for the average person. However, the value movement side has still not been revolutionized. So the era that we're in right now is the process of digitizing, tokenizing, in crypto terms, all of the value into the world, all commodities, stocks, assets, bonds, commodities, all of that is being digitized at this very moment and will be continue to be digitized rapidly over the next few years. So understanding that aspect of how much value is set to come when you compare the internet of value, think of money, dollar signs compared to content, video, the the amount of money that is related to value versus commerce entertainment is 100x opportunity in comparison, and this will be significantly higher value creation event than the internet was, and that should significantly put it into context on why this opportunity shouldn't be missed.
And I think one question that I have, and I think many people have, is why would they give us this opportunity? So I'm of a bit of a kind of mindset that there are uh, parties out there in the world that sort of manipulate world events, certainly in regards to banking. Um, why, if we're going through this kind of shift, which I very much think we are, you very much think we are, and you've done an unbelievable amount of research, guys. I can't recommend Smoke sort of channels enough to you, and we're very lucky to have him on. Um, but why would they? And what I mean by give us that opportunity is do this kind of thing on public blockchains. Now, I have spoke previously about why public beat private blockchains. There's many reasons, but why do it this way? I don't really. And is that something that you've thought about? That's a big question, and we don't always have all the answers. But it's something I think about, and I can honestly say I'm not quite sure. Have you thought about that? And do you have any kind of response to why are they doing it this way? You know, why are they almost giving us that opportunity? Is it because they don't think we're smart enough to understand it, or you know?
Yeah, so my I've definitely been asked this many times,
I
and I've
believe it.
certainly pondered it plenty. And first and foremost, one of the things that I would just tell anyone who's been in this space a long time or new in this space, this transformation is so much bigger than me and you, than anyone watching this video, than anyone that's on social media. We are talking about the natural evolution of money. If we go back into the beginning of time, we started with trading minerals, and then turned to coins, and then paper and plastic and Apple Pay, and now we're going to have digital money. So that's the primary view that I look at it from. That we are just experiencing the natural evolution of money and the natural evolution of making transactions more efficient, and that's just in the technological age that we're in. Was always going to happen eventually. And I would say, just from the other half, um, I'm not naive or arrogant regarding my um, importance in this entire shift at all. And I think that's what a lot of crypto investors um, unfortunately have. They have a self-importance belief system that thinks that billionaires in the world truly care about what they do with their capital and their money, and that's couldn't be farther from the truth. I read their documentations many every day, and trying to keep small people with not as much money as them away from similar opportunities is not on the top of their priority list. However, they are also very aware of the information disparity. Information is the only thing um, that will keep you away from these opportunities. And unfortunately, 99% of the population of the world does not have access to information on this level that we're discussing, that is available on social media in the small communities that we, dissipate this information in. And just that natural aspect of life, on top of the fact this is a natural aspect of a natural evolution of money, it's truly not worth their time and effort to, you know, keep us out of this technology. And even when you think of the comparison to the internet is a open source technology that everyone can build on and interact with and build wealth. If they're business savvy enough to use the internet as a foundational technology, and crypto technology and digital assets would be nothing different. This would be a public technology that, if you're business savvy enough, if you have um, the mindset to put your capital and invest into companies you have conviction on, because you did the research necessary to understand their future value, then yeah, that would make sense that you should deserve the value that you created for yourself by positioning yourself ahead of time before the masses became aware, similar to how people did the similar with the internet. And powerful people existed that during that time in the early 90s and early 2000s, and those same powerful people exist now. But trying to prevent billions of people from accessing open source technology is simply not worth the hassle.
And it kind of defies the point, also, doesn't it? Right? If we're trying to facilitate the next sort of iteration of money and value, well, we want to get people to use it. I say we're not, some sort of cabal or anything like that, but just thinking out loud. You kind of want to get people to actually use that and be friendly with it, and sort of progress like that. And I think that's actually probably the best explanation I've found for why do it this way. They don't care if a few people get rich. It's not that, I mean, when we talk about crypto, and we always have this, we always think this is a far bigger space than what it is. The percentage of people involved in the cryptocurrency space today, certainly into the ISO assets specifically, we're talking perhaps millions, a few million, in some cases, hundreds of thousands that actually use, partake, and have any sort of significant size in it. We're really not as big as we think. And we always do that, I think, as human. We're very good at doing that as human beings. And sometimes it serves us, sometimes it doesn't. And kind of getting entrenched in our own BS, our own kind of, story, whereas this is far greater. And I do love what you have to sort of say about that. I don't know if you've got anything you want to kind of lead on with, or any comments on that before we dive into some of these assets specifically.
Yeah, I think one of the comments you made earlier, of just one of the reasons why you don't want to miss this exact specific crucial point of crypto adoption, and that's simply because the rules are changing. This isn't the first cycle. We're on our fourth crypto cycle. And if you didn't live through the last few cycles, or even just for one previous cycle, and you try to copy and paste the same methods and strategies for this cycle, simply won't be successful. And that's for, the utility era is now approaching crypto assets, where ISO assets that necessarily weren't chosen to for their use case in previous cycles, now they are finally being chosen. And unfortunately, at this point in time, while they're being chosen for the first time in any cycle, we also know that there's been a significant historic rise of meme coins, which you could certainly say is a major distraction from these eight assets, which don't represent a significant market share of the crypto ecosystem at this point in time. But I've seen it documented many times that ISO assets will receive a higher trading volume than non ISO assets, which will in turn increase their price. So that's the basic mechanism how crypto assets price work is this the trading volume from being purchased from exchanges drives up the value of the asset. However, this is going to be the first time that assets being purchased off an exchange will be directly used for 24/7 usage, because that is one of the big the big selling points for blockchain is that it's one of the first 24/7 technologies. So ISOS is being used on a 24/7 basis in an era where meme coins are currently dominating retail attention. It's definitely a point in time where you don't want to just waste your attention, waste your capital when these assets are going to reach astronomical values while not seemingly occupying the public mindset. So it was just another reminder on how important it is to understand that this list of assets will definitely take a dominant market share, and we're talking in the trillions versus non-ISO assets or meme coins for that nature.
Do you know? There's so much that I mean, you saying some of that stuff. There's so much I could sort of come back with in terms of, isn't it interesting how somebody like Elon Musk, who is got to be the biggest promoter, he would perhaps say indirectly, of Dogecoin, a meme coin that was literally designed as an entire joke. It's very interesting how somebody like that would promote something like that, when, if me and you can perhaps understand the bigger innovation that's going on here, I would say there's a slim chance that he doesn't. And surely he recognizes the kind of, not to pick on Elon here, but I think that's very interesting. And I do think meme coins are largely a distraction from what's coming in regards to utility. And we haven't yet seen, I love the point that you touched on there, the kind of usage to any real global scale of this technology, and that will come. And what happens to the kind of prices of these cryptos when you have people going to the open market, the exchanges, and buying them to actually use and utilize them? That's something we've not even seen yet. And I guess a question on the back end of that, before we dive down a little bit deeper, is what do you think that means for the general cycle that the cryptocurrency space follows? Do you think that gets eradicated? And we're talking about the Bitcoin 4-year cycle here that was perfectly centered around debt refinancing and economic cycles, another topic entirely. Do you think we see these cycles continue, or do we think perhaps some of the space remains there, but the rest of it kind of sees more linear growth due to usage and utility?
For everyone, listening and watching this, if you if it's not obvious to you yet, observing your surroundings and what's going on in the market regarding adoption, I will be the first one to tell you that we are in the process of ending the 4-year cycle. That is something that I'm seeing abundantly share between banks and financial institutions, specifically the ending of the 4-year cycle because of regulations. Um, Even Bitcoin specifically with the ETFs, there is a significant amount of Bitcoin being taken off the open market at a rate that's faster than miners are producing Bitcoin. So that in itself is just one reason why Bitcoin itself won't follow the 4-year cycle anymore. But altcoins, more specifically, they won't follow Bitcoin. They won't follow Bitcoin's 4-year cycle because they will maintain their own liquidity, because the entire market currently follows Bitcoin's liquidity and speculation and announcements and bad news. However, when an asset is being used on a 24/7 basis and it's a deflationary asset, XRP, in this case, the the value will increase based on it being used and not following the price of Bitcoin. And that point in time, which hasn't ever existed in crypto, is a day in the near term where the price of an asset will be determined by its economic value, but determined by the team behind it, the partnerships that it has, and more importantly, the problem that it's solving, and solving um, valuable valuable issues like payments, like tokenization of real world assets, and moving all forms of value at the speed of light at no cost. that is something that is going to allow each of these ISO assets to develop their own price action independent of Bitcoin. And that is certainly happening at this very moment when we look at serious regulation, serious adoption, and serious institutional acknowledgement of these crypto assets. That is something that is I'm observing happening in real time and will certainly be more clear over this next bear market as we transition into the utility cycle.
Yeah, exciting, very exciting. And it's certainly even more exciting if you understand some of the things that are being spoken about here in this conversation. I really hope if you're stumbling upon the crypto space, this would be a great video to start on, but quite a high level one as well. And we will try and keep it as layman as kind of possible, but it's often hard to do with such an undertaking as the one that's being done. You know, there is a transformational shift happening, and these cryptos are playing a role in it. And I think there's been a concerted effort to try and make it look like perhaps that isn't the case. But the evidence, like what Smoke finds on a regular basis, I think is simply undeniable. And let's perhaps talk a little bit about that. So you've been researching a lot of these coins for a hell of a long time now. Um, let's predominantly start off with XRP. We could maybe even group XLM into it, and then we can talk more broadly about some of the ISOs. What is it that you're kind of looking at and understanding with XRP and XLM broadly? And then maybe you could cite some things that you've seen, of which I know there's a lot, to kind of back up the kind of vision that you have for XLM and XRP. I mean, first of all, they're very similarly named and founded essentially by the same
Mhm.
person. You know, is that even something?
Um, so like I mentioned earlier, Ripple and Stellar, they're mentioned, and I can name at least 20 documents off the top of my head right now where I've seen them, paired together, just discussed. And the people that write these documentations, the authors, the audience of these documentations, those are important as well. So when you see a document written, published by a bank, published for a country like Russia, or published for another bank or another financial institution, those are very powerful and profound documents to me because that means it's a serious conversation. That means very little to no deception is being used as opposed to a news station or a news headline. When banks are talking to each other, that's when I listen. And Ripple and Stellar has been uniquely documented as first and foremost the only two blockchains that have DLT applications specifically regarding the correspondent banking system, which is the old-fashioned way of making payments between one bank to another bank, which is extremely costly and extremely wasteful. And Ripple and Stellar has targeted this aspect of the financial system to use blockchain for what it's was truly intended for, and that's to move value and process payments. And Ripple and Stellar has established themselves as the leading payment-based public blockchains, and them being ISO assets is certainly another label that solidifies their position in the international payments realm as two names that are consistently acknowledged and consistently cited as respected names in the payment space, and the tokens behind them will share the same success as the their name and their popularity is going as well.
And what do you think? You know, can you draw any sort of differences? I think when people look at XRP and they look at XLM, they're both trying to undertake a similar task. But I guess one difference that I've perhaps seen with XRP and XLM is XRP seems more kind of institutionally focused, and XLM seems more perhaps on the ground. You know, they're working with the likes of the UN, et cetera, to perhaps do more local style remittances and transfer of values, whereas XRP perhaps seems more institutionally focused. Would that be a fair difference?
Yeah,
Perhaps.
I would say that's a pretty accurate explanation. So XRPL is a enterprise blockchain for high value, high velocity payments. And Stellar, I definitely think there's a lot of misconceptions around Stellar regarding, how much value they will transfer or if it will compete with XRP. And, it's certainly two different lanes that they will dominate. XRP, institutional enterprise, that means high value payments that move really fast all the time, and scalable international. However, Stellar, on the other hand, their focus, a huge focus of Stellar is unbanking banking the unbanked. I apologize. What people don't understand is that there is a lot of people that don't have access to the global financial system. They don't have a bank account, they don't have a cell phone, they don't have a way to interact with um, the cross border payment system like the average person is in a first world country. So when you think about the billions of people that don't have access to transact, to make payments, to save money, to start a business on their own, that is a lot of economic value that is untapped, that doesn't even exist yet, that Stellar is going to be able to include into the financial system, because these are people that have, economic value to contribute to the financial system. However, based on the country that they're in, the geographic location, and the poverty level of their community, they may not have the privilege to interact with just the services that we take for granted, like Venmo, PayPal, and Zelle is not Zelle, Stellar is coming up with applications that specifically deal with banking people that don't have the facilities to access quality payment services, and that is a lot of value, trillions of value to be unlocked simply through Stellar's efforts directly.
I think it's fascinating. I really love how you or where you took that, because there's not just an overhaul of our financial system, there's an enabling to access to a financial system for literally billions of people that perhaps have a phone, but they don't have access to banking services, or they perhaps don't have access to proper identification. Now, before we explore some coins more outside the realms, because there's quite a few other ISOs that I do want to touch on. You know, you've definitely heard this kind of new world order style agenda of one world governments, one world currencies, one world financial systems. And I just want to ask this more for my own curiosity, as somebody as intellectual as yourself. Do you think that this technology is hurtling us towards that? I mean, because to me it seems we don't perhaps need one currency, but what we need is a system globally that can almost interact as if it was one settlement layer, one currency layer. Um, have you thought about that?
A one world currency,
Or
I certainly have.
yeah, or a kind of
Yeah, it
one world
certainly gets some.
system that this is kind of ushering in.
Yeah, for certain that will definitely go definitely going in that direction for sure. And like I said, using the internet as a foundation to contextualize the situation is always a wise thing to do. So I know you've heard the term FinTernet
Yep.
from the Bank of International Settlements. That is something that people should become a lot more familiar with. Just like we have a regular internet right now and getting online, the FinTernet is going to be the exact iteration of that, but in the financial way. So instead of getting online, we're going to be getting on chain. Getting onto a blockchain instead of getting online, and instead of getting on the internet, or most likely not going to call it the FinTernet, but that's essentially what it will be. It will be just one payments platform to pretty much um, govern and transact internationally, and every country that gets on board and partners with this payment system, with this internet based cloud based system, will be able to participate in low fee efficient transactions. So I definitely do think we're going to all eventually use similar, if not one to two, internet type financial systems. And I definitely have research that I've published on my page that Ripple's interledger protocol that allows interoperability between traditional bank ledgers and blockchains. There is direct connections between Ripple's interledger protocol and the Bank of International Settlements payment system that they're currently developing as their FinTernet system to be deployed internationally. So that is, one thing to pique your curiosity on how essential Ripple is to this global transformation. Because, like I said, the FinTernet will be the financial iteration of the internet, and Ripple has many direct Bank of International Settlement connections, and Ripple's technology directly has been documented in various diagrams as being a part of the mechanism to actually facilitate these payments internationally and globally.
Yeah, I've certainly heard Christine Lagarde mention the FinTernet and specifically mention Ripple as a company and Circle for USD. And I think the majority of USDC, sorry, is on XLM. So not just that, Augustin Carlson, I think I'm saying that right, or Carlston. He's he's quite a unique character. and I'll leave it at that. I'm sure everybody's familiar with him. He's also continuously spoke about the Finternet. And actually, it's very interesting how these technologies slot in. And the thing is, nobody's kind of came out, or certainly, your big banks, even though they've hinted behind the scenes, there's documents, and you uncover a lot of that. They don't say it publicly, perhaps. In some cases, perhaps they do. But me and you could talk about XLM and XRP all day long, and I would actually love to do that at some point. But really, what I want this to be more than anything is a broad introduction to what's going on here. And XRP and XLM perhaps going to play some of the two largest roles in the world that we're moving towards, but they aren't the only cryptocurrencies that are involved in ISO. Let's maybe explore some of the other cryptos that you perhaps have stumbled upon, and done a little bit of digging into and seen some documentation for. Perhaps something like Hedera, Iota, I know you've been speaking about recently, but maybe we can leave that more towards the end and we can talk about the Internet of Things. Let's talk about some of the other ISO coins and some of the ones that are sort of spiking your attention.
Sure. I think one of the most important things that, anyone watching this video should take away from is what exactly is the value proposition of ISO coins? Like, why exactly should you, invest into these coins and put your money behind them? And having the ISO classification ensures interoperability with the traditional financial system. And it ensures interoperability in between these assets from a compliant and technological point of view. So all of these assets, there isn't going to be one blockchain to rule the world. I know that's a popular quote, but these there may be eight. There may be eight blockchains that rule the world, and they most definitely high chance to be ISO assets. And that is the case because there's, like I said earlier, there's many examples of ISO assets being deployed simultaneously simply because they're ISO assets and their quality has already been vetted and the homework on them has already been done. And so the banks don't have to go and do extra amount of due diligence on their assets. They can just choose the obvious ISO assets because they know that they're in the clear. They don't have to meet extensive extra compliance, and the banks can just choose them based on the use case and the solution that they're looking for. And one example recently that I just uncovered was a document from Novati, um, where they discussed the Australian stablecoin, where they're deploying XDC, Ripple, and Hedera simultaneously for three different use cases around the stablecoin. So XDC, for example, is going to use this Australian stablecoin for trade finance. That's pretty much the focus of XDC, the $30 trillion a year trade finance. We're talking cargo ships, big shipments across seas, and that is over 100 documentations for each transaction. XDC can tokenize that into liquidity and generate more revenue for a company that uses XDC to tokenize the trade finance process. And the stablecoin, Australian stablecoin, will be used to transact goods in the digital ecosystem. Ripple on on another aspect of the stablecoin is managing the liquidity through Ripple's on-demand liquidity platform. That's the another way an ISO asset interacts with the stablecoin. And Hedera is the platform that the stablecoin is being deployed on because of its efficiency and carbon neutral environment. And because they're all ISO assets, the synergy between them naturally comes because they're interoperable simply because they're ISO assets from a compliance and tech perspective.
Wow. I mean, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people are trying to work out is what different roles do these ISOs play, and they all play slightly different roles. For something, for example, like HBAR, I really see that as a go-to for tokenization, because of some of the properties it has. Very fit for purpose in terms of scale. It's eco-friendly, carbon negative, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's also got the fixed fee model. When we look at something like XRP for the kind of rails that it has already, we've sort of looked at XRP, XLM, HBAR, one of my favorite cryptos. I've got to ask you about that. What's your sort of broad take? We've seen how, and we've shown an example of how they're kind of working with other ISO coins, but as it relates to Hedera Hashgraph, what are your thoughts broadly before we dive down the sort of table?
Oh, I've dived down. I have an entire HBAR file, that I save all my HBAR documents on. And HBAR has been a compliant blockchain from the beginning. It's never had an issue with the SEC. In fact, it has SEC compliant technology in its tokenization studio, and it's
Wow.
even on one of the front runners for the next United States ETF, simply because it hasn't had any questions on its compliance or token status. So it certainly is in the good graces of the authorities and regulators on that end. But as far as efficiency, as far as just being a blockchain that is reliable, has been battle tested, and has a high scalability. All of that has been acknowledged and documented by banks, and is currently being chosen as a platform to be deployed on, simply because of its efficiency. And that's, pretty much a big reason why I'm a fan of HBAR personally. It's Algorand is in the same conversation as far as efficiency, carbon neutrality, and that is why that's being chosen as the platform to deploy the instant payment system in Europe. TIPS, Target Instant Payment System, that is being chosen. Algorand is being chosen for that, simply because of its efficiency, scalability as well. And if you use these blockchains, if you send them back and forth between wallets, you can observe for yourself that their speed and efficiency work in real time, as opposed to sending Bitcoin and Ethereum. And you can definitely acknowledge in that very moment why a bank would choose these ISO assets over a Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ISOs. For the sake of time, I don't think we're going to have the time to go through all of them. I'm sure we'll hopefully get Smoke back on again. And guys, please go and check out his certainly Twitter. For me, it's a go-to source of information and content. It keeps me very entertained looking at what Smoke's sort of finding and uncovering. One of the ISO coins that I do want to cover, though, is Iota with you, because Iota and the Internet of Things isn't quite the rage at the moment. But if you understand the Internet of Things and where that's going, and this machine-like AI-driven world that we're heading into, something like Iota is extremely relevant. And the fact that it's ISO compliant means there's a kind of transactional value there for it. And if you look at the machine world that we're moving towards, which sounds very iRobot-y and things like this, um, transactions between them, certainly when we talk about AI agents and things like this, are going to need to take place. Maybe we could uncover a little bit about Iota, because I don't think is on many people's bingo card, but it's extremely interesting. And I know you've done a lot of work and due diligence on it.
Certainly, I would definitely say I'm, one of the vocal voices about IOTA on X right now, and I would certain simply because the reason that you just said is that it's simply just misunderstood and just not covered it extensively, even though it has many interesting developments on behind the scenes, and has been working hard through the bear market and building and developing solutions to finally be used in the age of utility when its use cases is demanded. And what I tell people as well, people look for a way to combine artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency into one investment, and therefore people throw AI on, the front of any coin to get that AI hype and capital generated behind it. But in reality, right in our faces, the IOTA is the real AI crypto crossover coin, because in this era of robotics, which is, facilitated and accelerated by artificial intelligence. And Elon is doing a great job in showing us how far we are on the timeline of robotics. IOTA is set to take the stage as a essential crypto asset in its own lane regarding AI and robotics crossover, because it machine to machine transactions, car to car transactions, all of that will be a reality in the near term. And like I said, as AI is accelerating that in a very exponential way that most people aren't ready for. And what I mean by that is that robots within homes are not that far down the road, and it will be as common as cell phones. And IOTA being a crypto asset that is primarily focuses on feeless microtransactions from human to machine, machine to machine, that is certainly not an asset you're going to not have in your portfolio when robotics begins to proliferate our society and our existence. And IOTA will be the number one winner regarding crypto assets that have been working on preparing for the future of robotics and AI. And, no other crypto coin that I've seen, and I've done a lot of research. If another coin has popped up with similar features, it would be on my radar. However, IOTA is certainly has just been very forward thinking in its approach, and they've never been wrong in their approach. They've just been very early, and AI has accelerated the timeline to where Iota can now finally demonstrate its value along other ISO assets.
Wow, it's fascinating. This is what I mean. And I think this is something that, and it's a good thing in one regard that people are like this, but a bad thing for them that they're like this. People are always very quick to chase fast money and, what's popular at the moment. But this is why individuals like yourself are so valuable to the communities that form around you, is because you have this broader vision and understanding of the world that we're moving towards and what's going to be impactful in that world. And we're already now seeing years of research, the likes of yourselves and some others out there have done, actually come to fruition. If we look at where we are in regards to the ISO standards, the end of this year, all financial institutions have to be compliant with those standards. And there are cryptocurrencies waiting in the wings to enable this evolution of money that we're talking about. And now you're looking at things like Iota. It might not be the buzz. We're talking about robots. We're talking about this sort of stuff. But this is coming. This isn't a film that we're sort of citing here. This is actually documented stuff that's already being worked on and enabled. And something like Iota, you know, by the time everybody's talking about it, it's likely going to be probably too late. And I think it's fascinating the sort of research that you've done on that. And I wanted to kind of get that on people's radars because not a lot of people talk about Iota. If I make content on Iota, it doesn't do very well. That's because there isn't that kind of hype around it yet. There will be, and it's through listening to people like yourself that people can unlock some of these opportunities. And I'd love to get into all the rest of the ISO coins individually, and we could even do entire videos on them specifically. And guys, let us know in the comment section if you'd like that. One thing I want to move on to now, though, is this year. What are you looking forward to, and what are you kind of expecting to kick off this year? This year's set to be a big year, and it's certainly been documented as being set up to be a big year. What sort of things are you looking at and expecting this year?
2025 will be a very historic, monumental year for the crypto space, and everyone here will remember everything about this year moving forward. Everything that I've seen about this year has given me a lot of reason to be very serious in this moment. And outside of crypto, I'm not a serious person, but in crypto, this stuff is you don't want to miss this opportunity. So when it comes to approaching this content in a way, in an academic, mature, wise way, in a stoic way, that will allow you to see the bigger picture of what's going on. And most people don't really get to that mindset of just seeing things from the macro perspective, and that's pretty much what people that speak to me and that are in my community that follow me on my page that want access to the highest quality information possible. That's why they follow me, to just see the bigger picture and what's going on behind the scenes, and not just the surface level noise, because there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of distractions. But I would say the number one thing outside of the plenty bullish things, the abundant bullish aspects about this year specifically, the number one warning that I want everyone to take away from this is that this year the rules have changed. Using strategies from prior bull cycles will simply not be successful, and I don't think that's stressed enough. This is an idea and a concept, along with the ending of the 4-year cycles, that's specifically for this bull cycle, that I would like everyone to know that I'm warning you guys seriously, that there's currently over 30 million altcoins right now. And that's simply because of this meme coin madness, because of the ability to create meme coins in 5 minutes, that has completely diluted the entire crypto asset ecosystem in a way that the crypto asset market has never seen before. And institutions and smart money are documenting this reality of the market, how just picking an altcoin to hold through altcoin season because Bitcoin's value goes up is not going to work this cycle. Bitcoin is the price rise of Bitcoin is significantly contributed to by the Bitcoin ETFs. Bitcoin ETFs are not savvy crypto. The purchasers of Bitcoin ETFs are not savvy crypto investors that rotate their profits out of Bitcoin into altcoins, which cause altcoin season. These are, hedge funds. These are just billionaires that simply want to get exposure to the new shiny thing, and they're not going to sell their Bitcoin ETF profits into altcoins, which will mean that this altcoin season will not be similar to previous altcoin seasons where everyone and every coin will benefit from Bitcoin's price rise. Now, with the overlap of utility season and regulation and institutional adoption, that means that a significantly smaller amount of coins will rally this season, which means picking the winners of this season based on documentation, based on the perspectives of institutions, is more important than ever than any other cycle. Last cycle, you could get rich off of random memes. This cycle it's more of concentrated community-based memes, but they aren't going to get majority of the capital that flows into altcoin season this year. And that's something that I can't stress enough. That is something that if someone gets the opportunity to talk to me about altcoin season, this will be the first thing that I'll tell you, that buying random altcoins this cycle will be the worst thing that you've done in crypto ever, simply because utility tokens with actual projects and timelines behind them, are going to be the ones that banks, institutions choose as the platforms to deploy their financial applications on to serve their clients and actually use crypto for what it was meant for. And that was to make financial processes more efficient, cheaper, and um, just more streamlined for the consumer and businesses. So this altcoin season will be the first of its kind. It will be less speculation, and the utility that comes from being used on a 24/7 basis by some of the most influential institutions in the world will simply cause historical astronomical price action.
I couldn't stress that enough. Yeah, there's a kind of maturing of the space happening, and you've got to think it's a different elk of investors. Are your coins that may have done well just with the ebb and flow is going to do well when you have the likes of XRP, XLM, some of the ISO coins that we've spoken about actually getting used and utilized and adopted? And who is the kind of controller of the flow of capital, going to favor and choose? And I really like what you said about this season. Be careful, because it's a different. The rules of the game have changed. The rules of the road have changed, and we could talk all day long. Specifically, there's so much, by the way, that we haven't covered, guys. And I'm sure we'll get another video made up with Smoke if we're lucky enough. But in the meantime, do absolutely go and check out Smoke's Twitter. He also has a community. We'll leave a link to that in the description if any of you guys want to join and take a look at some of the research for yourself that he's doing, if you're curious. Smoke, is there anywhere else you want us to direct people?
X is the best location in the smoke room on school. That's where you can find the exact outline for the 2025 bull cycle. In our community, we discussed the exact moves of smart money, financial institutions, and banks, and their exact perspectives on this bull cycle. That isn't something that is known, widely, what banks are doing with their capital when they're selling, what they're doing after this bull cycle. And that's pretty much all the documentation that we cover in the smoke room, where we have weekly discussions to truly dive in on actual actionable strategies and methods to capitalize and maximize the ROI of your portfolio this cycle, and the most important cycle that has ever happened in crypto. And actually being in a community where people are focused on the right information, not focused on the noise and the hype and distraction, that's it's going to be like paramount and necessary during this cycle to make sure you don't make easily avoidable mistakes that retail investors are destined to make during this cycle.
Yeah. Smoke, the last thing for me to do is thank you very much for your time. Guys, if this has pricked your ears up, you know what to do. And also, we really look forward perhaps to having you on in the future. So, Smoke, thank you very much. It's been my absolute pleasure. Look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thanks for having me.